Krishna Thakura Tuyaro Saguru Dase Guru Kori
Oh He Vaishnava Thakura Tuyaro Sagara Edase Karuna Kori Diyapada Chaya Sodohe Amaya
Diyapada Chaya Sodohe Amaya
Diyapada Chaya Sodohe Amaya Tomara Charana Dhore Tomara Charana Dhore
Chaya Vega Domi Chaya Dosha Shodhi Chaya Guna Deho Dase
Chaya Vega Domi Chaya Dosha Sodhi Chaya Guna Deho Dase Chaya Guna Deho Dase Chaya Satsanga Deho He Amare Chaya Satsanga Deho He Amare Chaya Satsanga Deho He Amare Pushechi Sangero Mashe
Ekakiya Mala Nahi Payabala Harinam Sankirtane
Ekakiya Mara Nahi Paya Bala Harinam Sankirtane Harinam Sankirtane Tumi kripa kore Shadavindu diya Tumi kripa kore Shadavindu diya Tumi kripa kore Shadavindu diya Deho Krishna nama dane Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, welcome everyone.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Krishna, Hare Krishna. It is such a nice Vaishnav Thakur song in the morning.
Yes,
Such a
really.
blessing. Such a blessing.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Dandavad Pranam.
Hare
Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Prabhu.
Krishna.
Dandavat Pranam, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Dandavad Pranam, Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Dandavad Pranam, Jai Srila
Hare Krishna,
Prabhupada.
Prabhuji, Dhanyavad Pranam.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Welcome everyone to our weekly Bhakti Shastri discussion. um, Today we are doing chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita. Every week we're covering one chapter, and it's been going well, I think. As you may have seen on the group, I have posted all the homeworks up to chapter 6 and also a study guide. There are other study guides as well. This was quite detailed and useful, so I posted this one. But please feel free to use whatever study guide helps you answer those homework questions. And please then email me the homework questions. I provided the email address on the group, so that'll keep you up to speed on the weekly basis when you email it. So, the main idea, the main purpose of Bhakti Shastri is to study and read Srila Prabhupada's books. And the course is an excuse, a facility to do that. So I will, I hope you get time and you're taking out time to do that. I also noticed a few students made like study groups where they are studying together. And that's very nice. That's actually a very good way of getting things done. You have your time set and, you read it together and answer the questions together. And this way you get through it together. So please do that. That's very wonderful. I encourage that a lot. And then the homework questions prepare you for the exam. So together you work on the homework questions or with your study guide, you self-check it. And then on the exam, you'll find questions from the homework. And then you, for each book, we'll have the exam, and then we have the Bhakti Shastri at the end. Then you get the certificate at the end. So we'll start now with the prayers to the spiritual master, and after that we'll do chapter 2. Om Jnanam Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadammayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitangsha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Oops. Just sharing my slides. So, chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita. In the previous chapter, we we discussed Arjuna's 4 doubts, his 4 reasons not to fight. And a 5th reason, a very important one I forgot to mention last time, was indecision. Arjuna, as we will see in the 2nd chapter, tells Krishna, but that's not in chapter 1. That's why we didn't talk about it. It's in chapter 2. Arjuna tells Krishna that I don't know what is the best to do. Should I fight or should I not fight? And for this reason, I won't fight. So his indecision becomes a decision. And oftentimes we make that same mistake. Arjuna is such a wonderful role model for us. He's representing us. He's the everyman, as they say. And so many times we think, should I chant or should I not chant? Should I chant or should I not chant? And in that indecision, we are not chanting. Should I read or should I not read? Should I, do Bhakti Shastri, should I not? And then we think, well, I don't know what to do, so I won't do it. But then in that indecision, we're making a decision. So Arjun is making the same thing, the same mistake. He's saying, I don't know what is best to do. So therefore, Krishna, I should not fight. So in this chapter, we see Arjuna's surrender. And this is why every chapter of the Gita, it may seem, oh, this is just philosophical, it's not laden with bhakti. But every chapter of the Gita is illustrating an important aspect or limb or message of bhakti. In chapter 1, Arjuna speaks so many verses, but Krishna doesn't say a word. He doesn't start speaking because he can understand that Arjun is, at this point, he has not asked me to speak and he has not accepted me as a spiritual master. Therefore, why should I offer my opinion? Or if I do offer my opinion, what will be the use? So a very great teaching for us that until people are willing to listen, how can we speak to them? Until someone is willing to hear, how can we instruct them? But the devotee is so kind, is so merciful. Even if people are not ready to hear, he still somehow wants to give them the message by hook or by crook, the message of Bhagavad Gita. Somehow or the other, he wants to share that message and teach them and tell them about Krishna. This is why one of the offenses against the holy name is to share the glories of the holy name with the faithless. And that's, an offense against the holy name. In the Gita also, Krishna says in the 18th chapter that this conversation should not be shared with those who are envious, those who are not devoted to me. Yet Prabhupada says that the devotee is even more merciful than the Lord, and he tries to help people even if they don't have faith. He shares the holy name with them. Even if they don't want to hear, they're not Krishna's devotee, he gives them a Bhagavad Gita. But real knowledge, the real exchange of knowledge can only happen when there's surrender. And until we don't surrender to Krishna, Krishna cannot reveal himself within the heart. And this is why Krishna gives so much suffering in our life. This is the purpose of suffering. Because Krishna, one could question, why not Krishna just give us the knowledge? Why he has to, he can just give us the knowledge, and with the knowledge we could advance. But he's giving the knowledge. But the problem is we cannot hear the knowledge, and he cannot share that knowledge. We're incapable of receiving that knowledge until we come to the point of surrender. And the difficulties in our life help us come to the point of surrendering to Krishna. And Arjun, when does he surrender? When he's lost all hope, when he's in the middle of life and death, when he's shivering, his bow is quivering, he's unable to stand. At that point, he surrenders to Krishna. Anything less than the Mahabharata, this war, would not have brought Arjun, who's such a powerful warrior, who's such a great king, who's such a great prince. It would not have brought him to his knees. But Krishna could only give the Gita when he was willing to hear. So, chapter 2 is a succinct overview of the Gita's philosophy. Arjuna approaches Krishna in a mood of humility and desperation, accepting him as his guru. Krishna explains the science of the self. He details the practical application of such wisdom. He concludes by describing the symptoms of one who has fully realized such truths. So these are the general themes of chapter 2, 4 main themes. And we see at the end, chapter 2 is not just about the soul, but also the symptoms of the transcendentalist. So every chapter of the Gita can be divided in terms of Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojan. Sambandha is knowledge of the self. It starts with, who am I? Who is God? I'm the soul. I'm different from the body. Abhideya is the practical knowledge, practical application of this knowledge. This is how we should apply it. This is how we should practice it. And finally, Prayojan is the result. These are the symptoms that one will acquire. This is the benediction or the result of Bhakti Yoga, of the practice and the knowledge. The result of knowledge and devotion, Bhakti and Vedanta. So the Gita has once again 5 topics. And this chapter begins with the first one, who am I? Who is the Atma? As souls living in the material world, we are performing activities within the jurisdiction of time, though we actually belong to the spiritual world, in the spiritual world with God. So, what's special about this sentence? Why could one say that this is the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita?
It has all 5 aspects too, of
Yes.
the 5 topics.
Yes, very good. All 5 topics are present in this sentence. And this is what the Gita talks about. So now, if you take those 5 things and you connect them together, this is what you get. The Gita is trying to tell us that we are a soul, the souls in the material world, performing activities within time, but we belong to Krishna. We've lost our relationship with Krishna. So this is a very long chapter. As it's mentioned, chapter 2 is the entire Gita summarized. And it's true, actually. When you read through it, it's such a deep chapter. There's so much in this chapter. And from beginning to end, it takes you from the basic philosophy all the way up to the symptoms of a prema bhakta, pure devotee of the Lord. And so we'll just go through this section by section because I think the largest or the second largest chapter in the Gita. Maybe chapter 18 is a bit longer. And so how do we cover it in an hour? This was the best way. We just go through it section by section. And that's why I won't read many verses this time like I did last time, because we have a lot of ground to cover. So this first section, as I started with, is Arjuna's surrender. His accepting the Lord. That is the beginning of our spiritual life, is surrender. So text 1 through 9 is describing this. Krishna responds to Arjuna's confusion with strong critical words. Arjuna restates his previous arguments, the 4 arguments, and then becomes confused. He therefore surrenders to Krishna in the mood of a disciple, setting the proper example. He then honestly expresses his mind to his spiritual master, saying, Govinda, I shall not fight. So there's many important parts to this. Krishna says, how have these impurities come upon you? they're not befitting a man who knows the value of life. So he first of all chastises Arjuna. When the disciple surrenders to the spiritual master's duty is to chastise the disciple. And this is why the spiritual master waits, because until one surrenders, one cannot do that. Because if this teacher chastises the student will just leave if they're not committed, right? If they're not surrendered. So he chastises him to wake him up. And that chastisement is the beginning of mercy. The chastisement of the spiritual master seems like the displeasure of the spiritual master. But actually, it's the pleasure of the spiritual master. Because he cares, because he wants to spend time on that disciple. Therefore, he's chastising. That is love, right? That is care. That is great love. So he chastises, setting the example of the genuine bona fide spiritual master. So I was just reading yesterday in the Prabhupada Lilamrit how Srila Prabhupada says that the spiritual master's role is not to flatter the disciple. When we are preaching Krishna consciousness, he was saying we should not flatter, but we should say the real truth. We should, not present some mishy-mashy, wishy-washy philosophy to people so that they might think that we're really sophisticated, new agey people. We should speak the truth. We should speak the philosophy as it is. Yet at the same time, the Gita itself says we can speak the philosophy as it is in a way that is palatable. We can say it in a way, we can, package it in a way that they may find it attractive. So you make beautiful slides, and you present it in a very nice way. But the content should be the same. The content should not be just something half-baked. That's number one. And secondly, we see in Prabhupada's own example that Srila Prabhupada spoke very strongly. He spoke without compromise, the philosophy as it is. But in his relationships, in his way of relating with people, he was very soft with new people until they had surrendered. And he was so soft, wanting not to rub them the wrong way, that one time in South Africa, and we cannot imitate this, but just as an example, his host, the family, the nice, pious Indian family that was hosting him there, on the basis of whom, not on the basis, but as a base, Prabhupada was using their home to start Krishna consciousness in South Africa. They had put onions and garlic in Prabhupada's food. Onions, I think, not garlic, onions in Prabhupada's food. And when it came, the devotees, Prabhupada and the devotee were sitting around the table, and the devotees were immediately smelled it and said, "Prabhupada, this has onions in it." And they made a big snarl, and Prabhupada said, "Be quiet, just eat it." And he actually ate the food with the onions because he didn't want to offend his guest, his host. He didn't want to make them feel bad, because he knew time, place, and circumstance. He was connecting with them in that way. So very important point is that we the spiritual. So one thing that Prabhupada's disciples noted is that Prabhupada was super gentle, something that doesn't come through in his biographies often. He was, it comes through like in the memories when you hear disciples speaking about Srila Prabhupada, that he was so sweet and gentle. And the people who he chastised, because we also hear Prabhupada was, strong at times, chastised, were actually the devotees who were the most dedicated. So the disciples and the devotees who were closest to him, he would chastise them because he was close to them. But to people who were just visiting him and also newer devotees, he was a perfect host, the guest, gentleman. So Krishna's example is like that. Until Arjuna surrenders, he's just smiling. He's, "Oh, you want to go there? Okay, I'll take you there. You want to go in the middle of the two battlefields? Okay, I'll do that for you." And the moment then, because of Krishna's kindness and his love to Arjuna, Arjuna feels okay to surrender. Because of the affection that Krishna shows him, he gets the enthusiasm, the push, the confidence to surrender to Krishna. And then when he surrenders, then Krishna brings his intelligence to the right place. And that is preaching Krishna consciousness, that we are so kind to people that they feel, genuinely kind, because that's the way we're supposed to be, that they feel that this person is someone I can trust. If we start being, very strong in the beginning, they'll just get scared and go away. And then once they're dedicated, then we point out, no, this is the right philosophy, so that they can make spiritual advancement. And the same the spiritual master does with us. And until we are their actual, based on our advancement, we can correct more. So the spiritual master can chastise the disciple in the way that someone else cannot chastise their student, because the spiritual master has the right to do it, and they have the advancement to do it. But to a certain degree, if one is teaching others, one is a guide to others, one chastises or guides others. So Arjuna reinstates his previous arguments. So he makes his own points very clear and then becomes confused. He surrenders in the mood of a disciple. And then he honestly expresses his mind. Govinda, I shall not fight. At this point, you may wonder that if Arjuna surrendered, and he surrenders before verse 9, then why is he telling Krishna, I will not fight? If you're surrendered, then you depend on the decision of that person to whom you surrender. Right? If I say I surrender unto you, and then I say, this is what I'm going to do, and this is what I'm not going to do, then you'll say, what type of surrender is this? So Arjuna here is again showing the example of the perfect disciple. The disciple's duty is to surrender, to be 100% committed to what the spiritual master says, to follow that. However, once the disciple is surrendered, it is the duty of the disciple to express their mind to the spiritual master, so that the spiritual master knows what their desire is, and then the spiritual master can guide them accordingly. Arjuna is so convinced. He's saying, Krishna, I won't fight, but I'm surrendered unto you. You tell me what I should do. So the disciple is committed to the spiritual master. He will do what the spiritual master says, but that doesn't mean that we should not ask questions, that we should not express what we think is right, and then tell the spiritual master, this is what I think is right, but whatever you do, that'll say. Also, that even that is within reason. Seeing that the spiritual master is bona fide, that this makes common sense, so there's no fanaticism. So tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti tadjnanam jnanastatvadarshina. Pariprashnena, asking questions, is part of surrender. Surrender doesn't mean being mindless. Surrender doesn't mean blind faith. Surrender doesn't mean just following the leader and everyone goes into a well. Surrender means using one's intelligence. But surrender means that recognizing that I am not the most intelligent person, I'm not all-knowing, all-powerful. I have come for spiritual guidance. And as difficult as it may seem, I will follow that guidance because I have unflinching trust in this representative of the Lord. Again, within common sense, within bounds. Prabhupada says in every situation, we always have to use our intelligence, because who knows, the teacher could also be misguided. So this is why Krishna has given us the intelligence, and through our intelligence, we can understand things. It's Krishna's given intelligence. We can understand, is this the difference between my incapability to surrender, or is this misguidance? And most of the time, at least in my life, I can understand, no, I don't want to take that step of surrender. It's too much for my ego. But my spiritual master is telling me to take that step now. What a wonderful thing. And this distress or this unhappiness or this challenge will bring me closer to more surrender to Krishna. So that's text 1 through 9. Then text 10 to 13. A truly wise person does not mistake the body to be the self. This deals with Sambandha, Krishna's instructions on the soul. The individual soul eternally exists and the body constantly changes. Therefore, one should not abandon his religious duties due to bodily attachments. So spiritual life is not for the weak-hearted. One cannot give up one's prescribed duty due to difficulty, weak-heartedness, bodily attachments. Krishna is showing that it has, spiritual life is a real thing. It has real consequences. It has real challenges. And Arjuna is, setting the standard that hopefully surely none of us will have to do. But Krishna gives Arjuna the biggest test so that none of us can say that our test is greater than his. Oh, this isn't relevant to me because Arjuna didn't, he had an easier time than I did. No, he has the most difficult test in front of him. So though we cannot imitate him, we can gain inspiration from Arjuna. And in order to get that determination, one has to be grounded in the knowledge of the soul. That we are not this body, we are the soul. Because that's the only way we'll have the strength to do the right thing. If we think we're the body, then as soon as the body is in difficulty, we'll stop. But when we know we're not the body, we're the spirit soul, then we will do when we are even in spite of all difficulties. These are very wonderful verses. Please take your time to read them in your own time. The difference between the body and the soul is so simple, but it's so profound. And unfortunately, most of the world doesn't know this difference. And if they just knew this, they'd be so much happier. I'm a college professor, so I in every class, some get some opportunity to talk about, the nature of life, the nature of the soul. And people are so, just the simplest thing, but they're so moved by it. They think it's so deep. It's so profound. They're like, this is deep. This is profound, It's just the difference between the body and the soul. This is deep. People, when they read Shakespeare, then Shakespeare, starts to talk about these things, about life and the eternality of the soul, the difference between the soul and the body. And they read that and they're like, oh, this is deep, And this is the most fundamental, ABCD of the Bhagavad Gita. There's one incident where at the Los Angeles Rath Yatra, which happens at Venice Beach, they have a question and answer booth. So His Holiness Jayadvaita Maharaj was sitting at the question and answer booth. And he's sitting there and he's preaching strongly like he does. And he's emphasizing the point. He's saying, we are not these bodies, but we're the spirit soul. We're not these bodies, but we're the spirit soul. And he says it 3 times. We're not these bodies, but we are the spirit soul. And in the back of that tent, there's these 2 ladies who had just come out of the ocean. They're sitting there in their bikinis, and they were very big, very large ladies, very, very big. And they both look at each other. And they, after hearing Maharaj say, we're not the body, but we're the spirit soul, they look at each other and they say, oh, that's such a relief, isn't it? So people are so disturbed about their bodies. The body is fat, the body is sick, the body is troublesome, the body is old. And just the knowledge that we're not these bodies, but we're the soul. The soul is always beautiful. The body may or may not be beautiful. Who cares? That knowledge brings so much relief. They say these words, oh, that's such a relief, isn't it? always in anxiety over their body and always distressed over their body. And this knowledge gives us true relief. One must execute his duty regardless of bodily inconvenience. Text 14 to 25. For the soul is eternal and the body is temporary. The soul cannot be killed and the body cannot be saved from death. Therefore, Arjuna should not shrink from the necessity of war. So if we are the soul, then we should execute our duty regardless of bodily inconvenience. I attend this japa call with His Grace Shama Sundar Prabhu from Houston, and he encourages people to wake up early in the morning, like really early in the morning, like 3 a.m., 2 a.m., like that. Chant their rounds before Mangalarati. And so one time he came here and then he had a flight back to Houston. And so every day he's on the call at 2 a.m. in the morning. And when the next day when he reached, he texted me, said that I arrived here in Houston at 11:30 at night. I got to sleep at midnight, and I woke up at my regular time at 1:15 in the morning. He said I got exactly 85 minutes of sleep. I'm not sure if I did the calculation right, but it was 85 minutes. Because I got exactly 85 minutes of sleep. And then he said, that is the determination you need to get love for Krishna. Right? So he chants a lot of rounds every day and very intently, very nicely. And so the point is that a person who realizes that I'm not this body can overcome the distresses of the body, the lethargy of the body. Krishna actually tells us, Arjuna, give up lethargy and fight, because they understand this is the duty of the soul. I'm a soul, and this is in relation to the soul. Like my Guru Maharaj, Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, is very much like that also. Heaven or hell, he'll be up in the morning at 4 a.m. or 3:30 a.m. And he has programs every single night until midnight. Like it's like he hardly ever would sleep before midnight. And sometimes when he would wake up at that time in the morning, his legs would shake. Like his body would shake out of exhaustion. Like he would, his whole body would shake. But he would get up and he'd take a cold shower, and then on the altar he would be there after 10 minutes. So Krishna is giving the teaching in the second chapter of immense determination, in spite of bodily inconvenience, in spite of social inconvenience, in spite of mental inconvenience, every inconvenience Arjuna has in fighting this battle. But he's saying that we have to have that intense determination. And our battle is not, thank God, is not actually being on a battle. Our battle is not being in Kurukshetra. Our battle is conquering our sleep. Our battle is doing our sadhana. And Krishna is telling us that we should be as determined as Arjuna. We should not shrink from our duty to serve the devotee, to serve the Lord.
But I turn on the water quickly.
Okay.
Wash your hands.
Next one, text 14 to 25. Krishna restates and strengthens his points. Krishna reiterates these points from different angles and quotes Shastra to support his opinion. He then explains that the soul is impervious to all material transformations. For the soul, death is simply a change of the body, as commonplace as a change of clothes. So these are all very famous verses. You must memorize them. In the previous one, we had the verse Dehinosmin yatha dehe Kaumaram Yovanam Jara Tatha Dehantara Prapti Dhiras Tatra Namohyati. Krishna is giving an argument for the existence of the soul. He's telling us that just like we're changing bodies in this life, why should we be surprised that we will change bodies in our next life? And I'm going to I should share these verses. So we'll get to the verses after I get through the slides. And in this one, the famous verse is Vasangsi jirnani yatha vihaya navani grihnati naroparani tatha sharirani vihaya jirnani nyani samyati navani dehi. So he's saying that you're changing bodies like you're changing clothes. Don't be surprised by the change of body. Don't be afraid of this body. Don't be afraid of death. Go on doing your service to the Lord. And whatever body it may be in, go on serving the Lord. And then he says, before this, he says, Matra sparshastu konteya shitoshna sukha dukkada agama payino nityastang sadiksha subharata. That do your duty, do your service without considering happiness or distress, fame and infamy, honor and dishonor. Because understand that they arise from sense perception, O Siyana Bharat, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. These verses I learned when I was like 8 years old, or maybe less, 6, 7 years old, and I can never forget them. The best time to learn verses is when you're very young, because you can never forget them. They're kind of like Christmas rhymes. And this is one of the very, very, very common themes of the Gita. And actually, one of the students did a project where they put together every time when this was spoken, where Krishna is telling us again and again to be undisturbed in happiness and distress, fame and infamy, honor and dishonor. It's like in every chapter he says this, that the qualities of a devotee, the qualities of a practitioner, the qualities needed to be successful, the qualities of a pure devotee are that they're undisturbed in happiness and distress. In spite of happy and distressful situations, they go on developing their Krishna consciousness, progressing in their Krishna consciousness. Because otherwise in this world, there's no other way. There's so many distractions. There's so many problems. There's so many people who cause us problems that unless we are undisturbed, we cannot be successful in spiritual life. Because in every situation, there'll be someone to disturb us. In every place, there'll be some problem. And that problem is and those disturbances are the very things that are testing our advancement, that are stopping us from reaching Krishna. Our focus towards those problems, our being disturbed by those problems. Same instruction Lord Chaitanya gives in the 3rd verse, right? He says, who can chant constantly? One who's more humble than a blade of grass, one who's more tolerant than a tree. Who can chant? Only such a person can chant. Otherwise, you cannot chant. Even you cannot chant unless you have this quality, because someone's going to disturb you, someone's going to criticize you, and your mind's going to be disturbed, and then you cannot chant. So Krishna's message of the Gita is so powerful. We just apply the Gita, all the other problems go away. Like we really don't need anything else. But we actually, we forget, like we remember, Krishna's instruction of the difference between the body and the soul. But then Krishna tells us, well, what does that mean? If you really know and act on the level that you're the soul, it means that you don't care for the fame and infamy of the body. You don't care for the honor or dishonor of the body. You don't care for the happiness and distress of the body. That's what that means. So Krishna is telling us the philosophy, and he's also telling Abhideya, the practical application. The philosophy was Sambandha, difference between the body and the soul. The application of that, you say, where's the application? He doesn't talk about chanting rounds in this chapter. He doesn't talk about waking up in the morning. The practical application is not being disturbed. Practicing, being undisturbed and fixed in one's devotional service. That is the Abhideya. That is actually the process. And the prayojan is soon to come. We'll see that then the qualities of a great devotee manifest in such a person. Krishna addresses The text now, next section, 26 to 30. Even if there is no soul. So all of this was based on the platform of the soul, on the knowledge of the soul. So what if we don't believe there's no soul? We're not convinced. Krishna addresses the following doubt. What if, as many philosophers say, there is no soul distinct from the body? We don't want to miss out just because we might be wrong. Even if this is true, Arjun should still fight. If the soul is not a distinct entity and is simply a product of matter, it will dissolve again into matter after death. And again that matter will be reformed into life. Thus death generates no loss. So even Buddhists who don't believe in the soul, really amazingly, which, even my students, they struggle. It's like, if you don't believe in the soul, how can you believe in reincarnation? But they believe in reincarnation because they believe exactly this, what Krishna is telling. He knows about this philosophy, that such people believe that, your material elements reincarnate. They believe that the subtle body, is reincarnating. The mind, the intelligence, and the ego. So there's no person that's reincarnating, but it's just the ego that's reincarnating. The false ego, they believe. Similarly, modern scientists may believe that we don't have a soul, we're just chemicals. But even they will believe that the chemicals are eternal, because it's so natural to the soul not to die. It's so central to the soul to be eternal that even they cannot resist thinking of the fact that they are eternal and they don't die. When I was studying in England, then we were living on Divinity Road. It was the name of the road where the devotees were living who were studying at Oxford University. And the person who was next to us was 97 years old, and his name was Bert. So every day Bert would make his trip to the coffee place. What do you call it? The coffee house. And it was just down the road, like basically at the end of the street. We lived in the middle of the street. And at the end of the street, you make a right turn and then cross the street, and that's where it was. It was a coffee place. And going down to the coffee place was his big task of the day. It would take him about 2 hours, 1 hour going and 1 hour coming, which would take us maybe a 5-minute walk. But he would go and then he would walk 5 steps and then he would sit to catch his breath. Then he'd walk another 5 steps, then he would sit. And then he would reach the coffee place and then he would spend like 3 hours there. He had a few friends about his age who he would spend time with, and then he would walk back. And so one day I asked Bert, when he was just, reaching his home and he was sitting outside his home, I asked Bert, I said, Bert, what do you think happens after death? Because Bert is 97 years old. And, any day we were just like, he's going to fall over today. He's going to, it was just like, he was so delicate. You could see he is, 97 years old. So he had fought in the World War I, World War II, and the Vietnam War. And not fought in all of them, but seen all 3 wars and fought in one of them. So he had a long life. He had seen a lot. He had suffered a lot. And at the end, he had no one. Like, he didn't have a wife. He didn't have kids. I think either he didn't have kids or they had died, or, he had seen everything, done everything. At the end, he's 97 years old, and somehow everyone else had died in these wars, but he was just left. Like a tree that, the forest fire happens and there's one tree standing in the middle. And so I asked him, what do you think happens after death? And we knew that Bert was an atheist. He was not atheist, like an agnostic. Kind of like, he didn't, he smoked quite a few cigarettes a day. He had his coffee. He was really from that European time, the harsh time. And he said, Gopal, I think, once I die, my chemicals will go in the earth. They'll go back into nature. But then my chemicals will stay. And my chemicals, they will stay. Because I have faith in nature. I'll be there in my chemicals. This was actually his response. He didn't say that after I die, I'll just die. I'll just die. I'm 97 years old. After that, I'm gone. He said, no, my chemicals will stay, and they will stay, and those chemicals will stay. So actually, just a week after that, Bert died. After, is very happy that I asked him that question before he died. And I'm sure when he died, he thought about God. Many atheists, agnostics like this, when they're actually on their deathbed, then they pray to God. My brother had a philosophy teacher, Dr. Schrodinger, and he was a avowed atheist. And he knew that my brother was a theist. He knew that he was a believer in God. And so in their philosophy class, he would, kind of, kind of chive my brother, like, at times, and they kind of had a very good student faculty relationship, in which they knew they disagreed with each other, but they liked each other. And both of them were, intelligent thinkers, so they liked thinking together. And so when he was on his deathbed, he called the students that he remembered, that he liked. So he called my brother, even though, they had different viewpoints. And he called my brother, and my brother went to see him at the hospital, and Dr. Schrodinger, he told him, Ravi, I was actually praying to Krishna yesterday. Because Ravi, it's the first time in my life that I'm actually afraid. I don't know what's going to happen after I die. And that's why I'm really afraid. Like, I don't know what's going to happen to me after I die. Imagine, right? A full professional philosopher, his whole life. He never retired until he had to go to the hospital. He taught 60, 70 years. Professional philosopher, never conceded or accepted the existence of God. But then in his final moments, he was afraid. Krishna says, I come as time. And he said, I prayed to Krishna. He actually gets to the point, because I'm actually afraid, Ravi. I don't know what's going to happen to me after death. So I'm sure Bert also had a prayer. There's quite a few devotees living next to him for many years. That house was a devotee house, and devotees would give him prasadam sometimes. He was 97 years old, sometimes they would help him down the street, and they would have their bead bag in their other hand chanting. So he was a pious soul. We actually we did his, observed his funeral also at our place. And so so his chemicals definitely reincarnated into a society of self-realized, or you could say society of transcendentalists. Okay, so that is Krishna's arguments against the idea of no soul. What happens if there's no soul? Then text 31 to 38. The next section. Abhideya, happiness comes from duty. So this is the practice part again. We're now from Sambandha into Abhideya. Arjuna argued that war would bring him unhappiness. Here Krishna shows that abandoning the war would bring unhappiness by creating an infamous stain in Arjuna's Kshatriya reputation. Fighting in the war, however, could bring only happiness. Win or lose. If Arjuna loses, he goes to the heavenly planets. If he wins, he enjoys the earthly kingdom. So Arjun had said that one of the big arguments he had given was based on enjoyment. Remember that this is not going to give us any pleasure, any enjoyment. It'll only bring us distress. But Krishna tells the opposite. He says, no, if you fight and die, you go to the heavenly planets, this at least, right? Of course, because Krishna is there, he'll go back home, back to Godhead. But the Vedic scriptures, Krishna's saying, Vedas are telling us that he who dies while fighting goes to heaven. And if you win, then you enjoy the kingdom. So what is the cause of your happiness? But if you run away from the battle, he tells, you'll simply get infamy. People will scorn you with unkind words. And he says, infamy is worse than death. And again, this is Krishna speaks on different levels for different people at different places in the Gita. So his point that infamy is worse than death, that is for a normal person, for a normal warrior. Infamy is worse than death. Just like for a normal warrior, going to the heavenly planets is the result of fighting in a battle. Whereas in the case of Arjuna, there's no question. He would die in the presence of Krishna and go back home, back to Godhead. In the same way, for a devotee, we just said, honor or dishonor don't matter. So Krishna just said honor and dishonor don't matter. So why is he saying infamy is worse than death? For a warrior, for a king, it's worse than death. But for a devotee, honor and dishonor don't matter. Infamy doesn't matter. They're not disturbed by it. So different shlokas for different folks, right? Different messages for different levels of advancement. Abhideya, happiness comes from pleasing Krishna. Krishna concludes by stating that Arjuna should not make his decisions based upon material happiness. Rather, he should fight for the sake of pleasing Krishna. So finally, Arjuna is exasperated that, but what about this? But what about this? In his mind, he's thinking like this. So Krishna says, no, then you just fight for me. You fight to please me. You fight for his sake, Krishna says. His meaning my sake, for the Lord's sake, to please the Lord, because you know that this is something that will please me, Krishna. In text 39 to, I can see this here, to 53, Krishna talks about Buddhi Yoga, how to act. And this is why the second chapter is a summary of the whole Gita. Like, I used to wonder, why is it the title Contents of the Gita summarized? Because now he's talking about chapters 3 and 5, action without reaction, right? Karma Yoga. And Karma Yoga is also Buddhi Yoga, acting with intelligence fixed on Krishna. Such action doesn't bring a reaction. Buddhi means intelligence. So doing yoga, acting with our intelligence fixed on Krishna. Two significant glories of Buddhi Yoga. Its benefits are eternal, and it frees one from indecisiveness. So when Arjuna was fighting for himself, he didn't know what to do. Should I fight or should I not fight? But when Arjuna is fighting for Krishna, when he's acting for Krishna, then there's no indecision, because you do what's pleasing to Krishna. When we're thinking of ourselves, there's indecision. Like, when we think, should I go on a vacation? Like, so hard. Should I go here? Should I go there? I could go here. How long should I go for? Which place should I go for? What season should I go for? And so much anxiety is in that, trying to please oneself, because there's always indecision. There's inconclusiveness as to what will be most pleasing to oneself. But when we have some service, right, we have to go and visit the spiritual master or go for a festival for some service. There's no indecision. There's that, okay, that's where I need to go. That's my service. That's what I'm going to do. So that gives us freedom from indecisiveness. And whatever we do, it stays forever. Its benefits are eternal. In mature life, whatever we do, it just passes by. So many things we've done, and then we just, they don't even remain in our memory. We just wasted that time. Text 42 to 46. Acting without wisdom, Buddhi Yoga. The faults of acting without Buddhi. Those who act without knowledge become enamored by opulence and enjoyment and follow only the portions of the Vedas that grant material boons. Such persons never develop steadiness or determination. Therefore, one should rise above the materialistic portion of the Vedas by knowing that their purpose is to serve Krishna. Traigunya Vishya Veda, Nistraigunya Bhavarjana, Nirvandvo Nita Sattvasto. He says, don't be attracted by the flowery language of the Vedas, but understand the purpose behind them. I am the purpose. So Buddhi Yoga is even higher than acting according to the Vedas, because the Vedas are engaging us in fruitive activities. And Krishna is trying to encourage Arjuna that act without attachment to the fruit. And for this reason, the Gita is beyond the Vedas. The Vedas are there. There we say like the foundational books, but not just in our movement, but even outside, people hardly read the Vedas. They are all reading the Gita, because the Gita's knowledge is higher. So then why do we say the Vedas are the authority? Because the Vedas, they're like the encyclopedia. They have it all. And the Gita, the Upanishads, all includes the Veda. And the Vedas are spoken by God. They have the complete process by which every person can gradually rise to the highest platform. And that's why the Vedas are spoken by Krishna and the foundational books. But those of us who want the fast track, we are leading our life by the Bhagavad Gita. We can skip all of this. And that's why if we have any doubt, Krishna himself is clarifying that we don't need to follow all the things mentioned in the Vedas. Because their goal is to bring us to Krishna, and Krishna is right here in the Gita. Text 47 to 53. The second part of this is kind of a second subsection of this section. The result of acting in Buddhi Yoga is liberation. Acting out of duty only, without personal attachment, is yoga. This yoga keeps all sinful reactions far away and will purify even previous sins, thereby granting liberation. So, freedom from sins, purification, liberation is the result of acting in this way. However, to engage in such detached, dutiful activity, one must become disinterested in all hopes of sense gratification, typically promised in the Vedic Karmakanda. Being thus fixed, one achieves samadhi. So finally, this is the prayojan, the final section, which I'll try to cover in 5 minutes. We're a bit over time today. It's the longest chapter, so that's why it's taking a little longer. From text 54 to 72 is this section, and it starts with Arjuna's question. He says, this is so wonderful, Krishna. So what's the result? What's going to happen to me if I follow this? So what's the qualities of the transcendentalists? What are his general symptoms? How does he speak? How does he sit? How does he walk? By sitting, it means how does he restrain himself? How does he engage in activity? That means how does he walk? He says, well, he walks with 2 legs. No, he engages in activity. So the symptoms of one in Buddhi Yoga is described here. He renounces all desires for sense gratification and enjoys the pleasure within himself. The ultimate pleasure, chanting Hare Krishna, reading Srimad Bhagavatam, reading Bhagavad Gita. How he speaks, he neither praises nor condemns the duality of mundane, good and evil. He neither praises nor condemns the duality of mundane, good and evil. Very important point. There's 2 forms of attachment. One form of attachment is hankering for something, wanting something. And the second form of attachment is aversion to something. When we are averse to something or someone, it's a form of attachment. This is why when, the mind is so tricky. We think that if I stay away from this person, I'm very detached. There's so many devotees in the temple, but I like the cool devotees. I stay away from the other ones who aren't my age or aren't my, type. They're different race, they're different caste, or different language. But that is a form of attachment. Aversion is a form of attachment. You're attached to being with a certain type of group of people. because we're averse to another type of people. Similarly, I'm attached to not clean the bathroom. Right? I'm averse to cleaning the bathroom, and that's my attachment. That was the one service I never liked if someone gave me in the temple. Like, any other service, Prabhu, but just not the bathrooms. And the funny thing was that was the one service I would get again and again. Even when I was traveling, visiting one place, and all the devotees were helping, and they were just, the temple president says, everyone just take one service and we'll be done in an hour. And so they gave everyone service, there's nothing left, and then I was left and no service left. And he said, oh, I forgot, someone needs to clean the bathroom. Can you please clean the bathroom? Is this, that was just, couldn't have thought of anything else. But that's attachment. Aversion is a form of attachment. So Arjuna is averse to fighting. He's condemning fighting. He's averse to doing his duty, and that's a form of attachment. That's not detachment, that's attachment. Because he's not detached in the sense of whatever Krishna wants, I'll do. Whatever is the right thing to do, I'll do. No, I'm attached not to doing this. So aversion is another form of attachment. How he sits, 58 to 63. He can perfectly withdraw his senses from the sense objects because he has a higher taste of spiritual bliss, gained by focusing the mind on Krishna. That's why whenever we actually have a problem, any problem, a social problem, a family problem, any problem, then the best response to it is a spiritual response. We should think about, reflect on the spiritual points, and discuss with the other person also what is the spiritual solution. So now in this section, how he sits, he can perfectly withdraw his senses from the sense objects because he has a higher taste of spiritual bliss, gained by focusing the mind on Krishna. So because his mind is focused, he can withdraw himself from sense objects. There is no other effective means to control the senses. If not fixed on Krishna, the mind fixates on sense objects and thus inevitably drags one into illusion. And then text 54 to 72, how he walks. When engaging his senses, he does so with regulation and religious principle. So this is how he does things. He controls things by focusing his mind on Krishna. He limits his senses by that process, by positively engaging them. And he engages his senses in regulation and grounded in religious principles. Thus his senses become satisfied and his mind becomes peaceful. It's so nice in Krishna consciousness, we see that our mind gradually becomes peaceful. We become satisfied. In the beginning, when we join Krishna consciousness, when we're practicing Krishna consciousness, first our senses become more agitated because we've left material life, we're still wanting things, and then we come to spiritual life, and then we have a new set of wants. Well, I want to do this, and I want this role, and I want to do this as a devotee. But still it's want, I want as a devotee. But then as we gradually advance, then we want what Krishna wants. We realize that being a devotee means becoming more peaceful, not caring so much about our wants, but Krishna's wants, and caring more about our service than what we want. Without such regulated engagement, agitated senses search for satisfaction in sense objects, thus dragging the devotee into illusion. See, so even a devotee can go into illusion. If we're not regulated, if we don't keep striving to advance and be more satisfied rather than dissatisfied as a devotee, then our mind and our desires can drag us back into illusion, because we're still keeping ourselves in the center. We still haven't put Krishna in the center. It's still about us. And when we engage in Krishna's service with satisfaction, then it's about Krishna and seeing how Krishna reciprocates with our devotion. And finally, text 54 to 72, Krishna describes the symptoms of one in Buddhi Yoga. Although the sensory engagements of a self-realized soul appear similar to the activities of materialists, they are as different as night and day. 69. For unlike the common man, the actions of a Buddhi yogi are not driven by desire or false ego. So the materialist is engaged in activities, the devotee is also engaged in activities. Materialist is going to the doctor or is a doctor, the devotee is also going to the doctor or is a doctor. But the difference is night and day. Because one is driven by ego and their false ego, and so everything is about ego, anger, lust, greed, this, that. And the other person is driven by the desire to serve Krishna, performing the same actions, but one is doing it out of pure love, pure spontaneous affection for the Lord, and the other is doing it out of an egotism. So, being situated in such a knowledge, Krishna says, one enters into the kingdom of God. Text 72. One enters into the kingdom of God. So, everything that Prabhupada writes is actually so precise, right? He's written contents of the Gita summarized. In this chapter, Krishna takes us from the very basic knowledge of the soul all the way to the kingdom of God. So really, if we master this chapter, if we learn this chapter, if we study and practice this chapter alone, we can go back home, back to Godhead. And I was just reflecting how in chapter 4, Krishna says, there's nothing in this world as sublime as transcendental knowledge. And when we hear this and we go through chapter 2, we actually realize that there's nothing as sublime as spiritual knowledge. How wonderful is this knowledge? It can actually solve all of our problems. It can actually make us happy. And the only thing is that we forget it, like we read chapter 2 before, but then we have to read it again and again so we're reminded of these things. And if we just stay in this consciousness, we remember it frequently enough, we read it frequently enough, then all of our material distresses go away. We become perfectly happy. So this is chapter 2, and Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So I'll stop here. We have 15 minutes for comments, questions, if anyone has any reflections. Yes, Lavanya Mataji.
Yes, Prabhu. Actually, this one which you said, aversion to, is a kind of attachment. I think that, that plays a very significant role in the way we regulate our life. Because the thing is, I may end up thinking that, I don't want to do this, just like the example which you said. But still, I'm put into that situation where, I had to face that. Even though I don't like it, I think Krishna puts me into that situation because, I have to come out of that attachment.
Yes.
And also one more way, I think this, actually, I love to drink coffee. But the thing is, actually, I stopped drinking coffee now. Yes. Since last 1.5 months. But the thing is, I'm not averse to it. But the thing is, the thought, even if I see the coffee shop or something like that, I'm not, I don't feel like going to that coffee dinner. So it's not that, that I'm not averse to it. But still, I'm detached from coffee. So can I take this as an example for that? This is detachment, or what is attachment?
Yes. No, that's very well said. This is true in all things. Like the Ishopanishad always it says this, and Gita also says this, that we don't, we're not attached, we don't accept these things, nor do we hate these things. We understand that it's Krishna's energy. It's the creation of Krishna's energy for certain people who are in that consciousness, in that state of mind. But this is not my cup of tea, literally speaking, right? He'll say, this is not my cup of tea. Yeah, this is not my cup of tea. It's not meant for me. It's not good for me. But the tea itself is not bad. Coffee has many medicinal qualities, and Krishna's created it for some reason. That's why it's in creation. But it's not my cup of tea. The tea is not bad. There's no fault in the tea. There's a fault in my desire to want it.
Yes.
Similarly, Sachidanand Maharaj had said something very similar, that one cannot, he was talking to brahmacharis, to celibate people. He said, one cannot practice celibacy if one's averse to women, if one, is constantly averse to anything, to do with women, because then one's focused on women. So, oh, women are bad. Women cannot see women, cannot, because then you're always thinking of women. And many brahmachari, celibate people, they make that mistake in their desire to be distant from that, material attachment, which is a very glorious thing, to remain celibate and fully focused on Krishna. In their desire to be distant, their focus turns to women all the time rather than Krishna. The purpose of celibacy is to focus on Krishna. And that's the main thing, not to be attached or averse to the opposite sex, not to be attached or averse to women or men. Any form of aversion to any group of people. Of course, the devotee discriminates. So the devotee may be averse to eating meat. It's like, no, that's a bad thing. I'm averse to doing that. So there are certain things that one has to reject because they're not the right thing. But again, it's not like they hate meat eaters. They know that they are also souls and they need spiritual advancement. Yes.
Oh, thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Mataji. Hare Krishna. Nice point.
Hare Krishna.
Radhika Mataji. Next.
Yes, Prabhu. So I had some points. So, one thing that I like was that, so we can see that, like Arjun sets the example that, like how to surrender. So, because as you said that already, that we should not, we should always be in a humble mood if we want to surrender. And Arjun's spiritual journey starts with surrendering. And we can also see that Krishna doesn't start speaking because Arjuna hasn't really surrendered to the Lord yet, from his heart. So that's why. So that's why Krishna hasn't started speaking yet.
Such a nice point that you made. Thank you for making that point. We have to surrender with our heart. We have to really feel, and that's when we can make advancement. That's when we can help others who have surrendered with their heart. Very nice point. Thank you. Yashoda Vatsala Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Thank you for such a wonderful session today as well. And your slides are so much compact, like 72 text, getting into so many lessons.
The slides are actually Mother Urmila's mercy. So as I had mentioned before, I modify them from time to time, but I'm actually primarily using hers. And like you're saying, exactly, they're so nice. They really compact things in. Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prabhuji, for them. And what touched me today was, which I always into, is indecisiveness. And that always leads to, wrong decision or no action, mainly, right? So, and thank you for giving that, our intelligence, if we use Buddhi Yoga, then actually write Buddhi Yoga again. Because I was also thinking on the other side that material intelligence is also that we try to use many times, and then we feel like, oh, I failed here, although I tried using my intelligence. So, but I was just thinking, like, even that material intelligence comes from Krishna, right? So how should we differentiate between this intelligence, between,
Ah.
whether I'm thinking materially or spiritually for every activity? Thank you.
So we cannot actually fully do that ourselves, and this is why Arjuna surrenders. So, but we have enough intelligence to recognize that with my intelligence, I can't find the answer. So I also suffer from indecision, and I think we all do. It's like so many things we can do, so many paths we can take, and that's exactly the role of our guide. But we then have to be willing to have a guide, or at least take Krishna's guidance through the scriptures, through not a guide, but like the community of devotees, different ways in which we gain guidance. But most effective is to have one guide, and then we can really surrender. Like otherwise, if we have many people, then we'll follow the one that our mind likes. One person saying the one, so I'll choose the one that my mind likes. But when we have a spiritual master, then the spiritual master can see that this is actually, our way of trying to finagle our own desires rather than do what Krishna's desires is. So spiritual guidance is very important. And that's what can help us differentiate between material intelligence and spiritual intelligence. Because the spiritual master sharpens the intelligence. And when we sharpen our intelligence, then we can understand this is Maya and this is Krishna. So
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you so
thank
much.
you. Nice point. Thank you. Vimala Bhakti Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. So first of all, so many thanks for wonderful lectures. This is making me to at least read Bhagavad Gita. Every time I thought that I will do it, but that now I'm forced to do it. So for that, the credit goes to you and the team, all the devotees. Thank you so much. My one question is that in the second chapter, normally when we hear the lectures, so they say that the first verse, Bhagwan Uvacha, is 2.11.
Yes.
But although we see that Krishna says in 2.2 as well. So that is the first verse. Why?
Yes, because that's where in 2:11 is where Krishna actually starts to give the instruction. That's where the Bhagavad Gita, the Song of God, starts. That's where he starts to instruct Arjuna. Yes, before that he says, "Just behold, Partha." So he chides Arjun. He says a sentence, but he's not giving his talk, right? Like if someone's giving a speech, right? Before the speech, they may say, I need that cup of water, or this is how you plug in the PowerPoint. I'll put the chair here. But we don't say that the speech starts from where they actually start speaking. The speech starts from where they're actually speaking about what they came for.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mataji. Nice observation. Yes. Bhadra Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam, all great. Hare Krishna Prabhu. So Prabhu, just a point that I heard in one of the lectures is the problem, I shouldn't say the problem, the issue that we normally have in having faith in Krishna is because when we go to Krishna or go to the temple, we say, Krishna, I know that, I have faith in your strength and abilities, but I cannot fully trust your decisions because I know what is good for me. This is what I want. And that's where we generally end up making the biggest mistake because our intelligence is not perfect. And we just cannot accept the fact that Krishna is supreme. Krishna has all the six qualities, the most intelligent, the most wealth, the knowledge, but we still can't accept that fact. So that's why we end up making all the wrong decisions that we could ever make. So the question is that how can we avoid thinking from that perspective and not doubt Krishna's abilities or Krishna's intelligence, or in any way that we consider that Krishna is inferior in that way, or he maybe whether he can do that or can he really do that. So how can we stop thinking that way?
Yes, Prabhu, this is a very nice point and question, because that's the hard part, right? Getting that faith, getting that confidence that Krishna knows what is best for me, and he knows it better than even I do. In Bhishma Dev's instructions to Maharaj Yudhishthir, in the commentaries, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that Bhishma Dev is telling Maharaj Yudhishthir that Krishna's plan is always perfect, but we will not know that plan. And therefore, Krishna's plan is to be followed, not to be questioned. Now, this Krishna's plan is not to be known, but it's to be followed. And that's the hard part, that Krishna has a plan here. Krishna wants me to do something, but I must do this, or I must, or something's happening to my life that's apparently good for me, but I don't know why it's happening. And Bhishma Dev tells Arjuna, Krishna's plan is to be followed. We have to surrender to his plan. Like Arjun here is surrendering to his plan. We have to surrender. We don't have another choice anyway. We don't have control over nature. People's lives break apart. They get destroyed. They can't save themselves from it. They can't change the situation. If they could, then they would, but they're unable to. So we have to surrender to Krishna's plan, and that's our only option. So how do we get that faith? It's gradual, just like when gradually as we do devotional service. That's the thing, the process. Because just like if I'm lost and I stop somewhere and I ask someone for directions, and then they give me directions, then as I start to see their directions work, my faith increases. So as we start to see that the process of bhakti is working, and I'm feeling some reciprocation from Krishna, we start to gain more and more faith. So it's gradually, yes.
So to that point, there was another point that I heard in another lecture is the Prabhuji was saying that normally we plan our future looking at our present. Today I'm in this situation, I want to improve. So what is it that I need to do so that I'm in a better position later on, or tomorrow, or maybe 1 year down the line? We do all this planning, right? 1 year planning, 2 years, 5-year plan. So we make all these plans. But Prabhuji said that Krishna doesn't really operate that way. Krishna operates exactly in the opposite manner. He looks at our future and says that, okay, this devotee or this person is going to face this problem 1 year or 2 years down the line. So let me prepare him today so that when he gets to that point, it doesn't sound to be very difficult or, something that he cannot do. So Krishna always plans our life looking at the future.
Yes, that's a wonderful point. That's a very nice point. Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Thank you. Prashant Prabhu, you had your hand up and then you brought it down. Yeah, do you have something?
Yeah, I did, but I wanted to be respectful of your and everyone's time, so I can always circle back at the next class if you want.
It's okay. This is, as I mentioned, chapter 2, so we can go a little over time. So go ahead.
So I had read the Gita before, but not by Srila Prabhupada, but by Eknath Ishwaran, and I read both his Gita and his Gita commentary for daily living. Now what I do is I read this Gita before your class, so I had completed chapter 2. My question is, I'm just a little confused about the word Krishna consciousness, which is inserted in every purport in a different manner. I'll give you an example. In one of the texts, it says that, without Krishna consciousness, even if you are doing materially benevolent work, like social work, like non-violence, like nationalism, altruism, it's all pointless. Then I connected to Srila Prabhupada's Lilamrata, where he also said that Mahatma Gandhi was doing a good work, but his teacher said that it's going to be of no use, and it got proven right, because the same problems continued in India
Yes.
even after independence. So I'm just trying to, like, in our mind, we think if we do a good thing, it's just good because it is a good thing. But now with the purport, it is like, no, unless there's also Krishna consciousness. So I'm just struggling to understand, how do you bring Krishna consciousness on everything? Like even when you're working, right? It's especially difficult at this job. It's also sometimes difficult at home because not everyone is Krishna consciousness. Na? And so I'm just struggling with this whole thing. That how can be things that Mahatma Gandhi did or benevolent tasks be of no use if there's not Krishna consciousness? Won't good things be good regardless? That's my struggle. Yeah.
Very nice point. Very nice observation. In chapter 12 of the Gita, Krishna actually describes a yoga ladder. And in that yoga ladder, he does say that, he says the highest platform is to always think of Krishna, to meditate upon Krishna, to think of him continuously, which means, Prabhupada says, that means acting in Krishna consciousness. All of our activities are in meditation or an offering to Krishna. And then he says, if you cannot do that, he says, then do the regulated practices of bhakti, which means, the practices of sadhana like we do, plus your service to Krishna. And then he says, if you cannot do that, then he says, just work for me. So just good works that you're saying, Krishna's saying in the Gita, they're good. But there's different levels of action. And working without Krishna consciousness, without focusing our mind on Krishna, won't bring that same result as just doing good works. That's the point. Example is Arjuna, right? Arjuna was always a dutiful person. He was, the brother of Dharma personified. But when the most difficult test came, and the test came, should he fight or not, he was unable to do it unless he did it as an offering to Krishna, unless he did it in service to Krishna. Because duty, dharma, good works can take us only so far. And you actually find this with philanthropists. Like at a certain point, they get a midlife crisis or breakdown because they just realize that I spent my life trying to help people and I'm just not able to help people. Like Gandhi, you gave the example, right? I spent my life helping people, trying to help my nation, and now those same people are trying to shoot me. Those same people are scorning my name. It's like, how do you help people? I sacrificed my life for this. I mean, think about them. They give up all their pleasure. They could have been in Hawaii. They could have been in France. They could have been traveling. They gave it all up. They're not spending time with their children and their wife just to help people. And the very people that they're trying to help, they disown them. A very common story. The organization kicks them out. They're left with nothing. So unless we have that connection with Krishna, that we're doing this for Krishna, we won't be happy, even as a philanthropist. Because if we have that connection with Krishna, then even if we're doing it for everyone and they all turn against us, we know that Krishna observed and Krishna will reciprocate. And secondly, in our connection with Krishna, then we can truly help people. Then people will not do what they did to Gandhi, because they actually feel satisfied. They know that I got something genuine, something unlimited, something eternal that has no compare. So we can feed hungry people, but if we feed them prasadam, the mercy of the Lord, then that same feeding will bring us so much more bliss. And those who receive it, they will be so much more grateful. And we see that actually, every temple distributes thousands of plates of prasadam, every ISKCON temple does. And the homeless people, the people who eat it, or the people who come on Sundays, they come and tell us, they're like, something's different about this food. I don't just eat this food to satisfy my hunger. I actually feel spiritual when I eat this food. The same things with the books. I read so many books, but something special about these books. I noticed that when I assign something spiritual to my students at the university, without a fact, I've consistently noticed it. In that course, I'll always get higher evaluations than if in courses where I think, well, the content doesn't, justify, assigning a spiritual reading, so I won't do it. They always feel more grateful when they get something that has a spiritual aspect to it, has a Krishna conscious aspect to it. So that's because that's food for the soul. That's not just helping the clothes, but it's helping the actual person. And that's wonderful. Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for that nice question and comment. Yes. Rajiv Shamprabhu, we'll end with you, and then yes, last question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I know we have a class after this,
Yes.
but I just wanted to quickly understand. I think you mentioned that Buddhi Yoga is Karma Yoga, but elsewhere in Prabhupada's lectures and things like that, he's referred Buddhi Yoga equivalent to Bhakti Yoga. So how do we reconcile that?
Yes, very nice question. I'm glad you asked this. This is important because chapter 2 is a lot about Buddhi Yoga. So Buddhi Yoga is ultimately Bhakti Yoga, and Karma Yoga also is when purified, when advanced Karma Yoga is also Bhakti Yoga. Because when we're doing our karma, our activities for Krishna, and we're doing it out of love, then that Karma Yoga becomes Bhakti Yoga. That's why things are separate, but also in the Gita, you see, ultimately they're all kind of the same. Because every process in its advanced form becomes Bhakti Yoga. Same thing, dhyana. We can meditate on God. And when we start meditating with love on God, we actually like what we meditate on. We meditate with emotion and devotion. Then that's bhakti. That's meditation and bhakti. So that's why Buddhi Yoga is also Karma Yoga. Because Karma Yoga is also Bhakti Yoga. And Buddhi Yoga is also Bhakti Yoga. And the way Buddhi Yoga is being described in chapter 2 quite often is giving up the fruits of one's work. And that's the same as the definition of Karma Yoga.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we'll end here. And if you have any comments, questions, please feel free to post them on the group. And I will post the homework and all of your exercises, whatnot, the study guide, everything on the group. So please join in. Thank you. Please complete it. Please do your part. That's very important as far as possible. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Krishna, thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you,
Hare
Prabhu.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu. Dandavat
Thank you,
Pranam.
Prabhuji.
Dandavat Pranam. Hare Krishna.